Let me tell you something powerful, something you need to hear not just once, but over and over again until it settles deep inside you like a truth you've always known but never had the words for. Nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not in the way it once did, not in the way that broke you, because you're not the same person anymore. And that changes everything. You've built something sacred inside of you now, something called boundaries, not walls, not cages, not cold detachment, boundaries, the kind that let love in but stop manipulation at the door, the kind that allow you to rest, to breathe, to feel without being consumed. You learn that not everyone deserves access to your heart, and even fewer people deserve access to your peace. You don't just give your energy away anymore. You protect it like a treasure, because that's exactly what it is. The version of you that once stayed quiet to keep the peace, the one who laughed off the disrespect, the one who stayed when they knew they should have left, that version of you doesn't live here anymore. And let's be honest, that old version was surviving. This one is thriving. That's what growth looks like. You can love people and still walk away. You can be kind and still say no. You can be strong and still be soft. You finally understand the difference between being open-hearted and being a doormat. And that shift, that's your freedom. You don't miss red flags anymore. You see them. And when you do, you don't make excuses for them. You don't dress them up as potential. You don't turn them into projects. You take them for what they are and you move accordingly. That's not fear talking. That's not bitterness. That's intelligence. That's self-respect. That's finally listening to the voice inside you that says, we're not doing this again. And speaking of that voice, you hear it clearly now, don't you? That quiet whisper that used to be drowned out by noise, by doubt, by guilt, by other people's opinions. It's louder now, stronger, because you stopped outsourcing your safety to people who never had the capacity to hold it. You realize that the safest place you could ever be is within yourself. You trust your gut now. You don't second guess your instincts. You know the difference between discomfort that leads to growth and pain that leads to destruction. Yeah. You don't argue for your worth anymore. You walk in it. You don't wait for people to choose you. You choose yourself every single time. And because of that, because of the healing, the hard boundaries, the quiet strength, you are no longer available for the kind of harm that used to reach you. Not because life won't try, not because people won't disappoint, but because you no longer hand out the keys to your peace so easily. And that right there is everything. This isn't about pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about knowing that you now hold the power to respond to it differently. You don't collapse anymore. You don't beg anymore. You don't lose yourself to someone else's chaos anymore. You don't call it love when it's actually control. You don't call it loyalty when it's actually abuse. You've renamed the things that once confused you, and that clarity has made you untouchable. So no, nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not like that, because you've changed the rules, you've changed the locks, and you've changed the way you show up for yourself. You don't need permission to protect your heart. You don't need a reason to walk away. You don't need a crowd to stand tall. You are the protector now. And the you that's standing here today, that version won't settle for anything less than peace, dignity, and a love that doesn't ask you to shrink. And that is why you'll never be hurt like that again. Emotional boundaries are often misunderstood. People think setting boundaries means you're shutting others out, that you're building walls so high no one can reach you. But that's not what healthy boundaries are about. They're not walls that isolate you from the world. They're shields that protect you from what doesn't serve you. You don't set them because you hate people. You set them because you've learned to love yourself enough to protect your peace. You're not cold, you're not distant, and you're not selfish. You're just done letting people walk through your life like it's theirs to rearrange. There comes a point where you stop apologizing for needing space, for wanting clarity, and for saying no. You stop explaining why your standards exist because the people who respect them don't need an explanation, and the ones who don't will never accept one anyway. Boundaries are how you stop cycles. They're how you say, this ends with me. The late night anxiety, the one-sided friendships, the guilt tripping, the emotional roller coasters. Those patterns start to crumble the moment you draw a line in the sand and decide not to cross it anymore. And maybe that means some people leave. Maybe that means you disappoint others. But that's a price you're willing to pay, because keeping everyone else comfortable while you suffer silently isn't strength, it's self-betrayal. And you're done betraying yourself. You finally come to terms with the truth that not everything that knocks deserves to come in. Not every call deserves to be answered. Not every cry for help is your responsibility. You've stopped bleeding yourself dry for people who wouldn't offer you a drop if you were the one thirsty. That's the kind of self-respect boundaries create. They give you the freedom to love without losing yourself, to support without being swallowed, to listen without absorbing. You can still be kind, compassionate, and generous, but you don't let those qualities become weapons people use against you. You've realized that it's not your job to make everyone else comfortable at the cost of your own discomfort. It's not your job to carry someone else's emotional mess just because you're strong enough to lift it. Your job is to be whole, to be grounded, and to be at peace. Boundaries make that possible. They don't harden your heart, they heal it. They don't turn you into a loner, they help you find your people. The ones who get it. The ones who respect you without needing to be reminded. So now when someone crosses the line, you don't react with fear or guilt. You respond with clarity. You don't scream, you don't beg, you don't crumble. You simply remove your energy, you disengage. And that calm, quiet, unapologetic detachment, that's your shield, that's your power. You are no longer the version of yourself who tolerated that pain, and that matters more than most people realize. There was a time when you kept the peace at your own expense, when you stayed silent just to avoid conflict. When you smiled through the ache in your chest because you were too afraid to be seen as difficult or dramatic. You thought that if you loved harder, gave more, stayed longer, maybe things would change, but they didn't. And in the process, you lost parts of yourself trying to fix what wasn't yours to carry. That version of you, the one who endured, who compromised their own needs, who accepted the bare minimum in the name of love, is gone now. You've outgrown them. And you should be proud of that. Growth doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it shows up quietly in those moments when you say no without guilt, when you walk away without the need to explain, when you choose peace over pleasing. That's the new you. The one who knows better, who sees the warning signs early, who doesn't sit in rooms where your spirit feels small. You've shifted from survival mode to self-respect. You've moved from enduring to empowering. And that shift didn't happen overnight. It took time, tears, reflection, and hard truths. It took admitting that you deserved better, not because you're perfect, but because you're human. You are no longer begging people to treat you right. You're no longer waiting for someone to validate your worth. That version of you, the one who hoped they would change, who gave one more chance, who stayed one more time, no longer drives your decisions. Instead, you move with confidence. You choose peace over chaos. You protect your space like it's sacred because it is. You don't chase love. You attract it. And if someone doesn't meet you with the same energy, effort, and respect, you don't try harder. You let go. This new version of you holds boundaries with grace, speaks the truth even when your voice shakes, and refuses to make yourself small just to make others comfortable. You've learned that discomfort is sometimes the price of healing, and you're no longer afraid to pay it. You've made peace with the fact that not everyone will understand your growth. Some people like the version of you who stayed quiet, who tolerated disrespect, who made life easier for them, but that's no longer your concern. You're not here to be convenient. You're here to be whole. And maybe there are moments when you still feel the pull of old habits, when that voice of self-doubt creeps in, asking if you're being too much, too distant, too harsh. But now you recognize that voice. You don't let it drive, you acknowledge it. And then you remind yourself, you've changed and you're not going back. That kind of strength, that refusal to shrink back into your old self is how you know you've healed. That's how you know nothing and nobody will ever hurt you the way they once did, because you're not the same. And that changes everything. Of recognizing red flags has become a strength, not a burden. There was a time when you ignored them, not because you didn't see them, but because you hoped they'd go away. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. You convinced yourself it was just a bad day, just a misunderstanding, just a phase. But it wasn't. It was a pattern. And now you don't explain away patterns anymore. You've trained your eyes to see clearly and your heart to respond with wisdom, not wistful thinking. That shift from hoping someone will change to accepting who they truly are is what protects you now. You no longer hold on to potential. You pay attention to reality. Red flags don't shock you anymore. You spot them early. You know the signs, the dismissive comments, the broken promises, the lack of accountability, the emotional games. You've learned that love isn't supposed to feel confusing. It's not supposed to leave you wondering where you stand. And when it does, that's not your cue to try harder. It's your cue to walk away. You've learned that silence after disrespect isn't maturity, it's suppression. That forgiving too quickly isn't always healing. Sometimes it's avoiding. And you don't avoid anymore. You face things. You name things. You call them what they are, even when it hurts. You don't let red flags turn into full-blown disasters anymore. You don't need something to explode before you exit. You don't need to be broken to believe yourself. You don't wait for more proof. If it feels off, you investigate. If it drains you, you step back. That's not being guarded. That's being grounded. You don't let others talk you out of your truth. You've learned that some people will gaslight you just to keep their comfort. You don't take the bait. You stand firm. You trust your own read of the situation, and that self-trust, that's the greatest protection you've built. There's a deep kind of peace that comes with not needing chaos to validate your strength. You're not addicted to saving people anymore. You're not flattered by emotional messes. You no longer feel special being chosen by someone who disrespects everyone else. You've stopped romanticizing dysfunction. That's what healing does. It sobers you. It clears your vision. And with that clarity, you respond differently. You leave faster. You question sooner. You expect better. What used to be confusing is now obvious. What used to be tolerable is now a deal breaker. That's growth. You're no longer surprised when someone shows you who they are. You believe them the first time. You're not waiting for the second or third mistake. You don't need closure that comes wrapped in pain. You'd rather have distance and dignity than closeness and confusion. That's how you know you've changed. You don't carry red flags around like secrets anymore. You honor them. You talk about them. You act on them. That kind of emotional intelligence saves you from heartbreak. It saves you from reliving old cycles. And it proves one undeniable thing. The person you are today is no longer available for the kind of hurt you used to accept. Your peace is now non-negotiable. That's not just a catchy phrase. It's a personal contract you've signed with yourself. There was a time when you handed out pieces of your peace to keep others happy. You said yes when everything in you was screaming no. You entertained chaos because you didn't want to seem distant. You let people linger in your life long after they showed they had no business being there, but not anymore. That version of you that tolerated noise, that absorbed negativity, that stayed for the sake of history, that version is gone. You don't trade your calm for connection anymore. You don't sacrifice your sanity to prove loyalty. You've realized that peace isn't just a mood, it's a boundary. And you guard it now like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. Peace to you now is clarity. It's sleeping through the night without your mind running marathons. It's silence that doesn't feel awkward. It's space that doesn't feel lonely. It's knowing that you're not being manipulated, pressured, or drained, and you're not afraid to lose anyone who threatens that. You no longer fear being misunderstood for protecting yourself. You've learned that some people will label you cold just because you stopped letting them walk all over you, and that's fine. You're not interested in managing their perception. You're interested in preserving your peace. This peace isn't passive. It's fierce. It's not the absence of conflict. It's the courage to step away from it. It's not avoidance. It's discernment. You don't chase explanations anymore. You don't argue to be right. You don't beg for basic respect. If someone brings tension instead of trust, confusion instead of clarity, drama instead of depth, you withdraw. You don't slam doors, you just quietly close them. That stillness is your superpower. That silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And it's not just people. You've also let go of habits that robbed you of peace, overthinking, people pleasing, overextending yourself, trying to control every outcome. You've learned to breathe through uncertainty. You've stopped performing for approval. You've stopped overanalyzing every interaction. That mental freedom, that emotional freedom, it's sacred, and you don't jeopardize it for temporary validation. There's a deep kind of confidence that grows when you refuse to let the world dictate your emotional temperature. You don't rise to every provocation. You don't engage every insult. You don't internalize every criticism. Not because you don't care, but because you care more about protecting your energy. You've seen what happens when you let the wrong people too close. You've felt what it costs to carry someone else's emotional weight, and now you just don't allow it. You choose calm over chaos. Every time. And yes, that means your circle might be smaller now. The phone rings less. The invites don't come like they used to. But what you've gained is worth more than what you've lost. You walk through life lighter, clearer, and more sure of yourself because you've stopped trying to earn peace and started living like you deserve it. Healing isn't a destination. It's a defense mechanism. It's not about reaching a final stage where nothing touches you ever again. It's about becoming someone who knows how to recover faster, protect better, and recognize their own worth sooner. You used to think healing meant everything would be perfect, that the pain would disappear completely, that you'd never feel triggered or heartbroken again. But now you understand healing is more about building tools than building illusions. It's the quiet strength that helps you stand back up when life knocks you down. It's the ability to sit with your feelings instead of running from them. It's being able to cry and still keep your boundaries intact. It's realizing that a scar doesn't mean you're broken. It means you survived. You've stopped trying to rush the process. You no longer expect yourself to be over things in a day or bounce back without feeling. You give yourself room to feel what you need to feel, but you don't stay there forever. You've learned how to move forward without dragging the past with you. You've created rituals that ground you, thoughts that protect you, and boundaries that shelter you. That's what healing looks like. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's not always easy to explain, but it's powerful. And it's yours. You no longer get pulled back into the same patterns that once kept you stuck. You recognize the warning signs in yourself before they turn into setbacks. You hear the old voices, self-doubt, fear, guilt, but you don't let them dictate your actions. You've outgrown that. You've taught yourself how to respond instead of react. You've created distance between your triggers and your decisions. That kind of growth isn't something people always see, but you feel it in your bones, in your breath, in your ability to pause, assess, and protect yourself with love, not punishment. Healing hasn't made you harder. It's made you wiser. You still love deeply, but not blindly. You still trust, but not carelessly. You still hope, but you keep your feet on the ground. You've let go of the belief that you have to lose yourself to keep someone else. You've let go of the need to be perfect just to be worthy. You've made peace with your past, not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by accepting that it no longer has the right to hurt you the same way again. Your healing is your armor. It wraps around you in moments of chaos and reminds you you've been through worse and still came out standing. It gives you the strength to walk away from what doesn't serve you. It gives you the clarity to protect what does. It's not about never feeling pain again. It's about never being ruled by it. Healing has made you a better protector of your heart, a better listener to your soul, and a better friend to yourself. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you choose to take care of yourself. Your healing doesn't need to be understood to be valid. It just needs to be real. And yours is. Your inner voice is louder than anyone else's opinion. That didn't happen overnight. It took time, years maybe, to drown out the noise of other people's expectations, criticisms, and constant demands. For so long, you were tuned in to everyone but yourself. You listened to what others thought you should do, who you should be, how you should behave. You measured your worth through their reactions, their approvals, their acceptance. And in that noise, your own voice got quiet, almost silent, but not anymore. Now, your voice is the one that leads. It's the one that says, I know who I am, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. You've stopped seeking permission to feel what you feel. You've stopped explaining your boundaries to people who never respected them in the first place. You've stopped second guessing your instincts because someone else labeled them dramatic or sensitive or overthinking. You've learned that your body knows, your heart knows, your gut knows. And when something feels wrong, you don't need a panel of opinions to validate your decision to walk away. You've built that kind of trust within yourself, the trust that says, I don't need everyone to agree with me. I need to be at peace with myself. There's a power that comes when your own voice gets louder than your fear. When it gets louder than the judgment you've internalized. When it gets louder than the ghosts of your past trying to tell you you're not enough. You've quieted those ghosts by proving them wrong. Every day you chose yourself. Every day you didn't go back. Every day you chose healing over habit. That's the power of self-awareness. That's the power of listening inward. You used to crowdsource your decisions, hoping someone else would offer the clarity you couldn't find, but now you sit with yourself. You ask yourself hard questions. You wait for honest answers, and you honor them. That doesn't mean you never ask for help. It just means you don't abandon your truth to make someone else more comfortable. You no longer let their opinions override your peace. You no longer let their doubt become your direction. You move at your own pace in your own lane with your own rhythm, and that's how you know you've grown. There's a calm in you now, a knowing, a confidence that doesn't come from being the loudest in the room, but from being the most grounded in yourself. You've stopped performing. You've stopped proving. You've stopped apologizing for existing. When you hear criticism now, you don't automatically accept it as truth. You hold it up against what you know about yourself. If it fits, you work on it. If it doesn't, you let it go. That discernment, that's your freedom. Your inner voice used to whisper. Now it speaks clearly. It says, we don't do that anymore. It says, we've been through too much to go backwards. It says, trust me, I've got us. And because of that voice, that steady, unwavering voice, you walk differently, you decide differently, and most of all, you protect yourself differently. That's why nothing and nobody will ever hurt you the way they once did, because your own voice finally has the volume it always deserved.